Being released from prison in 1943, Indira started to focus on her marital life with Feroz Gandhi. In 1944, Indira and Feroz had their first son, Rajiv. In November 1946, she with her husband and son moved to Lucknow to set up a new home. A month later, they had their second son, Sanjay. After her children were born, Indira was met with a dilemma whether she should continue to be as involved in politics or be a dedicated homemaker and a mother. Many of those who have known her intimately assert that, if left to her, she would have enjoyed nothing more than looking after her home, husband and children. But she had little choice in the matter. When Indira needed to go out to attend to any family or political chores, she usually planned her activities in a way that ensured she was home once the boys returned from school. She frowned upon the practice of entrusting hired nannies for bringing up the children, a common culture among. But this arrangement did not last for long. Her father's insistence for her help made her move to Delhi. She took the boys with her but made frequent trips with both of them to meet Feroz in Lucknow. I did not have less love. I think my husband gave very deeply to me and I to him. I think giving is what makes for happiness, she told a journalist once. In the early 1950s, she unofficially served as the personal assistant to her father. Indira Gandhi became a member of the Congress Working Committee and Central Election Party in 1955. In 1958, she was appointed as a member of the Central Parliamentary Board of Congress. She was the chairperson, National Integration Council of AICC and the president, All India Youth Congress, 1956 and Women's Dep AICC. She became the president, Indian National Congress in 1959 and served till 1960. In 1960 at the Willingdon Hospital in Delhi, after suffering a second heart attack, Feroz Gandhi lost his life. Indira Gandhi physical and mental health deteriorates after Feroz's death. She felt her whole being was upset for years and later, she described it as a shock that cut her in two. After Feroz's death, Indira Gandhi's focus shifted and she became more involved in her father's work in national politics. Before the recovery from her husband's death, she faced another tragedy so soon. Her beloved father, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, died on 27 May 1964, which left Indira Gandhi completely broken inside, but she did not lose her patience and faced the circumstances courageously. After this, Lal Bahadur Shastri persuaded Indira Gandhi to join his cabinet as the Minister of Information and Broadcasting. She had been Minister of Information and Broadcasting from 1964 to 1966. On January 1966, then Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri died. As the meeting to appoint the next Prime Minister took place, huge crowds gathered outside the building, waiting for news. The then party chief, Satya Narayan Sinha, emerged. The crowd is said to have asked, "What is it? Boy or girl?" And Sinha responded, "It's a girl," causing the crowd to cheer with joy. Indira had won with 355 votes to Desai's 169. In typical Indira fashion, on learning she had won, she humbly called herself a Desh Sevika, or servant of the nation. When asked by a journalist about the significance of her election as the country's leader, following in her father's footsteps, she replied, "Perhaps it ensures some kind of continuity of policy, and also perhaps continuity of personality." The election of a woman as Prime Minister of India caught the attention of the world. In America, Indira appeared on the cover of Time magazine under the heading, "Troubled India in a Woman's Hands." English journalist John Brigg wrote in The Guardian, "Probably no woman in history has assumed a heavier burden of responsibility, and certainly no country of India's importance has ever before entrusted so much power to a woman." Indira's election paralleled a growing feminist movement in the West, yet Indira never considered herself to be a feminist. On 24 January 1966, Indira Gandhi was sworn in as the Prime Minister of India along with the new central cabinet by the President Radhakrishnan. Indira Gandhi became the first woman Prime Minister of India and the third Prime Minister of the country in succession to Jawaharlal Nehru and Lal Bahadur Shastri. Years of training, shouldering responsibilities, work tours and assistance to her father, culminated in her assuming the leadership of the Government of India. There was a spontaneous affection and genuine admiration expressed throughout the country. People felt she had stood the test of fire and deserved the honor. As the Prime Minister, Indira carried forward the Nehru legacy in economic planning. Like Nehru, she was committed to achieving self-reliance in crucial sectors like food, grains, defense and technology. Through the measures pursued by her, the Indian economy was insulated from adverse international issues such as the oil crisis. She also worked towards bringing down inflation to a reasonably low level, both in the mid-70s and the early 80s. The domestic production of crude oil had been stepped up substantially during this period. Like Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira pursued an imaginative policy of developing scientific research within the country by strengthening various scientific laboratories and institutions through increased funding. It is now widely recognized that India occupies a leading position in the developing countries with respect to scientific manpower and know-how. The second phase of land reforms undertaken in the early 70s altered the scenario in rural India by preventing the concentration of land in just a few hands. It provided land to millions of landless families. She took special interest in space research and research for peaceful uses of atomic energy. The Green Revolution in India was one of the important pieces of Indira's radical program in the mid and late 60s. Among the most important of these was the introduction of hybrid, high-yielding varieties of seeds for wheat and rice. Such crops increased production dramatically, especially in Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. Indira Gandhi made the Green Revolution a key government priority and along with the new hybrid seeds, initiated state subsidies, the provision of electrical power, water, fertilizers and credit to farmers. Agricultural income was not taxable. The result was that India became self-sufficient in food, a heartfelt aim for Indira after American President Johnson's erratic and condition-laden food aid. In 1969, India's Grand Old Party, the Congress, faced its first major split. The Old Guard led by party president S. Nijlingappa expelled Prime Minister Indira Gandhi from the party for fostering a cult of personality. The syndicate, as the senior members were called, could not quite come to terms with the fact that the Goongi Gudiya, dumb doll, their snide reference for Indira, had a mind of her own. The break was confirmed when Indira, after proposing N. Sanjeeva Reddy's name for presidentship, asked the congressmen to vote according to their conscience. V.V. Giri, the rebellious Congress candidate, won. Several talks and meetings were held between the warring Congress factions, syndicate, Old Guard and Indira's followers. But to no avail. On 28 October, Congress President Nijlingappa wrote an open letter to Indira charging her for creating a personality cult that threatened the democratic working of Congress. Intense lobbying followed in order to ascertain who would hold on to the majority of the Congress. Indira won, with a total of 297 Congress votes, 220 of them from Lok Sabha. Thereon, Indira's Congress took on the title Congress, R, for requisitionist and the syndicate clique became Congress, O, for the organization. In the late 60s, it was increasingly being realized that the economic policies and power structures had only brought about limited growth. But there had hardly been equitable distribution of its benefit. Indira was aware of these ground realities and was by no means separated from the broader leftist ideological paradigm vis-à-vis development. As the Prime Minister, she was concerned about the steep prices affecting the economy and was also aware that the poor were the worst hit by the situation. The radical Naxalite movement was gaining ground in different parts of the country. She was aware of the implications of the massive land grab movements inspired by leftist ideology. When the Congress split in 1969, Indira became the leader of one faction of the party and she proved that she was no less radical than the leftists in waging struggle against poverty. In the preparations of the fourth five-year plan, she constantly expressed her special concerns for the weaker sections of the population. She told her supporters that with their support, she was determined to fight against poverty effectively. She pursued the Nehruvian model of development with a greater degree of zeal and enterprise. Indira's political opponents campaigned on the slogan, Indira Hatao, remove Indira. Indira retooled it to Garibi Hatao, remove poverty. This slogan had a considerable impact. Indira was now looked upon by many as India's savior. Her election campaign was more energetic than it had ever been before. In the 1971 elections, she popularized the slogan of Garibi Hatao and made it a point to reach out to the various sections of the unprivileged groups of the rural India. Indira often stood in an open car for hours addressing the crowds, invoking radical rhetoric to arouse the masses, but at the same time, reassured the higher classes that she would be mindful of their interests as well. As a result, Indira and her supporters triumphed in the parliamentary elections. Indira Gandhi, as the Prime Minister of India, played a crucial role in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War and the subsequent formation of Bangladesh. She provided significant diplomatic and political support, including sheltering millions of Bengali refugees, and her actions led to India's intervention in the conflict, ultimately securing Bangladesh's independence. India was the second country to recognize Bangladesh as an independent state after its liberation. The government cited threats to national security as a war with Pakistan had recently been concluded. Due to the war and additional challenges of drought and the 1973 oil crisis, the economy was in poor condition. The government claimed that the strikes and protests had paralyzed the government and hurt the economy of the country greatly. In the face of massive political opposition, desertion, and disorder across the country and the party, Gandhi stuck to the advice of a few loyalists and her younger son Sanjay Gandhi, whose own power had grown considerably over the last few years to become an extra-constitutional authority. After resolving a procedural matter, President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad declared a state of internal emergency upon the Prime Minister's advice on the night of 25 June 1975, just a few minutes before the clock struck midnight. It has become almost habitual to view the history of the emergency, 1975 to 77, in black and white, where Indira Gandhi is portrayed as a despot with an insatiable appetite for power, while the protagonists of the JP movement are presented as a valorous coalition battling for the rights of the beleaguered masses. But the fact of the matter is that history resides not in the black and white of biased narratives but in the grey area of nuance and context. Stands to Mrs. Gandhi's credit that as soon as the economy stabilized by 1977 and the political crisis was brought under control, she herself terminated the emergency, called for national elections, lost them comprehensively, and accepted the mandate of the people. There was, in 1977, a backlash against the Congress on account of the tough decisions she had to make, but her return to power in 1980 was proof of the fact that at the end of the day, she was a servant of the people, and even the difficult choices she made were not for her own aggrandizement but because India, the land she loved and for which she would die, faced a situation in which she was convinced that drastic measures alone could protect it from self-destruction. In 1980, Indira faced the loss of another loved one. Her younger son Sanjay Gandhi died unexpectedly in an airplane crash. He was always Indira's choose heir in politics. But after his death, Indira Gandhi persuaded her reluctant elder son Rajiv to quit his job as a pilot and enter politics in February 1981. In June 1984, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered Operation Blue Star to root out a group of militant Sikh separatists who had occupied the Golden Temple, the Sikhs' holiest shrine. The leader of the group was Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, a Sikh fundamentalist who sought the creation of an independent Sikh majority country in Punjab state to be called Khalistan. Bhindranwale and dozens of his followers were killed in the military assault. Among the damages to the complex, aside from the Akhal Takht, there were bullet holes in the Golden Temple, and an important Sikh library, books and all, was destroyed by fire. Reports vary of the total number killed in the assault. More than 80 soldiers and at least hundreds of pilgrims caught in the crossfire were confirmed dead, according to government officially. Initially, Indian response outside Punjab was positive. Sikhs, on the other hand, were infuriated by the brutal desecration of their revered shrine. Prominent Sikhs spoke out against the action, and there were mutinies of Sikhs in the army. When it came to rebuilding the Akhal Takht, Gandhi refused to withdraw the army or to allow establishment Sikhs, who viewed temple repair and maintenance as a religious duty, to carry out the repairs. She also refused to replace her Sikh personal bodyguards, which she had been warned to do for her own safety. To the suggestion that she change her personal detail, she remarked, "Aren't we secular?" indicating her concern that she might be perceived as targeting Sikhs in contrast to the Indian political secular ideal defined in terms of government neutrality. But who would have known, her bravery and courage wouldn't help her? At the BBSR parade ground at Bhubaneswar, Odisha on 30th October 1984, Indira Om her speech said, "I am here today, I may not be here tomorrow. but the responsibility to look after national interest is on the shoulder of every citizen of India. I have often mentioned this earlier. Nobody knows how many attempts have been made to shoot me, lathis have been used to beat me. In Bhubaneswar itself, a brickbat hit me. They have attacked me in every possible manner. I do not care whether I live or die. I have lived a long life and I am proud that I spend the whole of my life in the service of my people. I am only proud of this and nothing else. I shall continue to serve until my last breath, and when I die, I can say that every drop of my blood will invigorate India and strengthen it. Perhaps she knew it was coming. On 31st October, the day after her speech, in a pale orange sari, black sandals and carrying a red cloth bag, Indira walked out of her house at 1 Safdarjung Road towards her office next door at 1 Akbar Road. She walked on the small cemented path of around 20 meters, surrounded by neem and oak trees, towards the gate separating her house and her office. She folded her hands to say namaste to the guards stationed there. It was about 9:09 a.m. when Sub-Inspector Beyant Singh fired 3 rounds into her abdomen from his sidearm. Satwant Singh then fired 30 rounds from his 10 gun into her after she had fallen to the ground. She was declared dead few hours later. Today, Indira is not among us, but her thoughts and actions do. Indira Gandhi is one of great personalities whose memory, paving a way for us, illuminates us. Her life journey from being Priyadarshini to Prime Minister is an indelible part of the country's history. Her progressive ideology and leadership style gave a new direction to Indian politics. Her personality was imbued with the strength of the Himalayas and the gravity of the seas.